All right, imagine this, okay? You land in a new country at 1 in the morning, ready to film, right?
Sounds exciting.
It does, but instead of, being able to just start exploring and
Yeah.
filming, you're hit with unexpected COVID tests.
Oh, no.
Yeah, a missing bag and total customs chaos.
That's rough.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened to this filmmaker we're talking about today in Egypt.
Oh,
We're
wow.
going to do a deep dive into excerpts from a podcast about their whole crazy experience, and I got to tell you, it's pretty eye-opening.
I bet.
Get ready to hear about this filmmaker's difficult journey,
Okay.
the really frustrating bureaucracy they had to deal with,
All right.
and ultimately how this whole experience kind of shows a bigger problem with tourism in Egypt in general.
Well, the interesting thing is this isn't just like one filmmaker's bad luck, right?
Yeah.
This kind of connects to something a lot of travelers to Egypt have been saying. There's this disconnect between how Egypt portrays itself as a super welcoming place for tourists and then like what actually happens when you get there.
It's kind of ironic, right? Because tourism makes up like a huge part of Egypt's GDP.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Around 12%, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So you'd think they'd want to like roll out the red carpet for tourists.
You would think. But it seems like in reality it's much more, well, complicated.
Yeah, for sure. So let's start with the filmmaker's arrival experience.
Okay.
They get to Cairo at 1 in the morning, exhausted, right?
Yeah.
And they get slapped with this surprise $265 COVID test
Seriously. Per person.
per person.
Oof.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, like, why wasn't that information clearer before they traveled?
Yeah, it's like a hidden fee that pops up at the worst possible time.
Totally. And to make things even worse, their baggage claim experience was, well, a total disaster.
Oh no, what happened?
So by 2:30 in the morning, they realize one of their bags is missing.
Uh-oh.
And this bag had all of their filming equipment in it,
Oh, man.
thanks to Ethiopian Airlines.
Yeah. Losing luggage is always super stressful, but when it's like all your important gear,
Oh, totally. It's a whole other level of stress.
especially when you need it for work, the stakes are way higher.
Absolutely. Then comes the customs part, right?
Right.
They go through the x-rays, all their stuff gets searched, and they get asked about a drone.
Uh-huh.
The filmmaker think it's better to be up front.
Yes, of course.
He just hands it over. You'd think that would make things smoother, right?
You'd think so, but ironically, that's when things really go south. It's kind of like a sign of the bureaucratic mess they're going to face the whole trip.
Wow. So handing over the drone backfires.
Totally. Instead of speeding things up, it sends them into an hour and a half of just like pure chaos.
What?
No system, no organization, just a ton of people yelling in Arabic. It's crazy. It's the opposite of what you expect at an international airport.
Yikes. So this chaotic scene, it really sets the stage, huh?
Totally.
It's 4 in the morning by the time they finally get to their hotel,
Okay.
only to find even more intense security there.
No way.
Yeah, the filmmaker described it as feeling more like an airport than a place to relax.
Well, this brings up a good point, right? A lot of countries have stepped up security lately, but what the filmmaker describes in Egypt seems like it goes beyond the normal. It's almost like they're trying to make visitors feel uneasy from the second they arrive.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to control everything and everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get into what happens at the hotel, because this is where things get really weird.
Oh, I'm ready for this.
This is where the paranoia kicks in.
Okay.
And things go from just being inconvenient to being, like, truly unsettling.
Oh.
They've been traveling for hours, exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
They just want to sleep, right?
Of course.
But that's not going to happen.
Oh, no. What happens?
So hotel security sees wires and walkie-talkies in their bags.
Okay.
Normal filmmaking equipment, right?
Right.
And suddenly it's like they've uncovered some huge national security threat.
The way they reacted to such basic stuff, like, that says a lot, right?
It does?
It just shows this deep suspicion of foreigners and what they might be up to. Like,
Yeah.
they're automatically seen as a threat.
So naturally, things escalate from there.
Oh, I bet.
The hotel manager gets called, a police officer shows up,
Okay.
and then even more police show up.
Really?
Yeah, they're treated like criminals, interrogated about every piece of their gear, even a simple back roller for exercise.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
This whole incident shows a crazy power imbalance, right?
totally.
The filmmaker and their team are, like, totally helpless
Mm-hmm.
at the mercy of these authorities who are just throwing their power around.
Yeah.
It's a scary example of how easily your freedoms can be taken away in a place like that.
For 6 hours, From 4:30 in the morning to 10:00 a.m., they're stuck outside in the cold, treated like suspects.
That is awful.
Dehumanizing, to say the least.
Totally.
And get this.
Right.
The filmmaker spent 10 weeks getting permits, meticulously making sure everything was legit.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, but it was all completely pointless.
Yeah, this is where the whole idea of order falls apart.
Totally.
The filmmaker followed all the rules, got all the permissions,
Yeah.
but none of it mattered because the system is so unpredictable.
So in Egypt, permits are just like worthless pieces of paper.
That's what it seems like.
Yeah.
The filmmaker thought those permits meant smooth sailing,
Right.
but they learned the hard way that in Egypt, there's a huge gap between what's supposed to happen and what actually happens on the ground.
Wow.
It's a system drowning in bureaucracy, with decisions made on a whim, leaving travelers feeling totally powerless.
And to top it all off,
Oh no, there's more.
yeah, their equipment gets taken.
No.
And they were told to pay an import tax.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Between 10 and 30% of the equipment's value.
Oh my gosh.
Thousands of dollars.
Are you kidding?
And no guarantee they'll even get their stuff back.
It's like a trap. They're punished for trying to do things the right way.
Exactly.
It shows how exploitative that whole system is. It's like they're held hostage.
Yeah.
Forced to pay a ton of money with no promise of fairness or even getting their tools back.
It's insane. So the gear is gone,
Yep.
and they have to figure something out. Talk about a filmmaking nightmare.
Right. It would be easy to just give up at that point, but this
Yeah.
filmmaker, they're incredibly resourceful.
Yeah.
They went out and bought an iPhone and some basic lights, just determined to make the most of the situation.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it really shows their dedication to their work and how resilient they are.
It's honestly inspiring to see that kind of like commitment, even when things are so tough.
Uh-huh.
But even with their, makeshift setup, there are still more challenges coming.
Oh, yeah, this is just the beginning.
So they're filming in a bakery,
Okay.
and they get approached by the police.
Oh, no.
Yeah, someone flashes a badge, I don't know if it was even real or not,
Mm.
and tells them to come to the station.
This is crazy. It really highlights how, intense the security is in Egypt.
Absolutely.
You're constantly being watched.
It's like someone could intervene at any moment.
Exactly. It's like you can't even relax.
Yeah, and it makes it really hard to, express yourself freely. Even something as simple as filming a bakery.
Yeah, it's stifling.
Okay, so they're at the police station,
Okay.
and an officer is going through their iPhone footage, like frame by frame,
Oh, wow.
and telling them what they have to delete.
What? Seriously?
And the thing is, his decisions seem totally random.
Really?
Yeah, it's not based on any rules or laws. It's like just what he personally doesn't like.
So it's just straight up censorship.
Yeah, and this is where things get really problematic.
Yeah.
It goes way beyond just being inconvenient.
Yeah.
It's a direct attack on artistic freedom.
It really is. It shows how arbitrary and subjective the rules are.
Exactly.
Like personal opinions have more weight than any actual guidelines.
Thankfully, they were smart and had airdropped all the footage to a dummy phone as a backup.
Whew. That was a good move.
Yeah, so they didn't lose everything, but that experience, being forced to delete their work because of one guy's opinion, it really messed with them.
Yeah, I bet. It makes sense that they would feel paranoid and defeated.
Totally. It's important to remember the psychological impact of stuff like this.
Yeah, for sure. It's more than just inconvenience.
Being watched and judged all the time.
It makes you feel so vulnerable.
Right, and it makes you lose trust, not just in the authorities, but in the whole system.
Exactly.
It's mind-boggling. Egypt depends so much on money from tourists,
Right.
but they treat visitors with so much suspicion and like they're harassing them.
It just doesn't make sense. You'd think they'd want to make things, welcoming and easy for visitors.
Right, especially since they rely so heavily on tourism.
It makes you wonder if their security measures are actually hurting the industry they depend on.
The filmmaker actually encourages people not to go to Egypt until things change.
Wow. That's a powerful statement.
Yeah, they think the only way the government will listen is if it hurts them financially.
It's a bold move, for sure. It raises an interesting question, though, about whether boycotting places can actually create positive change.
It's complicated, right?
Yeah.
Boycotts can have unintended consequences. They can hurt local businesses and people who really depend on tourism.
Exactly. It's a really complex issue. It makes you think about the role of tourism and what impact our travel choices can have.
Some people might say that you can avoid problems by just not taking your camera,
Right.
but the filmmaker disagrees with that. They said that even using your phone to take photos can be risky.
It sounds like it's not about the technology itself, it's about this like underlying culture of suspicion in Egypt.
Yeah, this feeling that you're being watched and judged everywhere you go really affects how you experience a place.
It makes it hard to relax and enjoy yourself.
Totally. This filmmaker's story is definitely disturbing, but is this a one-time thing or is this a bigger issue in Egypt?
That's the real question,
Yeah.
right? While this story is impactful, it's crucial to think about other people's experiences too. We can't make generalizations about a whole country based on just one person's story. But we also can't ignore the patterns that we see in what lots of visitors are saying.
Yeah, we need to be careful about jumping to conclusions, but at the same time, we can't just dismiss these experiences and how they affect people's view of Egypt.
It's a tough balance to strike. On the one hand, we have to recognize that Egypt has real security concerns, just like many other countries.
Right.
They've had to deal with terrorism, political instability, and social unrest.
It makes sense that they would want to protect their citizens in their country.
So the question becomes, how do you balance the need for security with making tourists feel welcome and safe?
Yeah, how do you find that sweet spot where security measures are effective without being oppressive?
Exactly. You want people to feel safe, but not like they're being suffocated.
This filmmaker's experience, even though it was really rough, gives us a chance to think about all of this.
Absolutely. It forces us to look beyond the pretty pictures and really confront the more complicated realities of traveling to places that are dealing with these kinds of issues.
So the filmmaker mentions they've filmed in over 25 countries, including places like Iran and Nigeria,
Wow.
places that have their own rules and challenges, right?
Right.
But they said that none of them have been as difficult as Egypt.
That's pretty significant. It suggests that the issue in Egypt isn't just about having rules, it's about how those rules are enforced. The lack of transparency and that constant sense of paranoia that you were talking about.
It's like you never know where you stand.
Exactly. Even the simplest things can be interpreted in the wrong way.
And that unpredictability can be more unsettling than any specific rule or restriction.
Yeah, for sure. It's the fear of the unknown, the feeling of constantly being judged that can really ruin a trip.
And it's a shame because Egypt has so much to offer.
Right. Amazing history, stunning landscapes, vibrant culture. It's unfortunate that all of that gets overshadowed by these negative experiences.
It feels like what this filmmaker went through really shows us there's a bigger conversation we need to have.
It does, yeah. Their experience makes us think about how we balance security and personal freedoms.
Yeah, so especially for tourists.
Right. It's a hard thing to balance.
How do you protect your people and your country without making it feel like visitors are being suffocated?
That's the question a lot of countries struggle with. And the filmmaker's idea of telling people not to visit Egypt until things change. Well, that brings up another interesting point about the whole idea of boycotts.
It's a pretty bold statement. But like we said earlier, boycotts can have unexpected effects too.
Oh, yeah. They can end up hurting local businesses and people who need tourism to make a living.
In a complicated situation with no easy solutions.
Yeah.
It makes you really think about the role of tourism and how our travel choices can make a difference.
Absolutely.
So what are the big things we're taking away from this deep dive? What can we learn as travelers from what this filmmaker went through?
I think the biggest takeaway is how important it is to really research a place before you go.
Right.
Knowing the local customs, the laws, and the potential challenges can help you be more prepared and avoid unnecessary problems.
Being informed makes a huge difference.
Hmm.
And I think beyond the practical stuff, it's also really important to be sensitive to other cultures and be respectful.
Oh, absolutely.
It's about understanding that different places have different norms and expectations.
You have to approach a new culture with an open mind and be willing to learn.
That can prevent misunderstandings and help you have better experiences.
Totally.
This filmmaker's story, even with all the challenges, is also a great example of resilience and being adaptable.
Yeah, it is. Despite everything they faced, they still found creative ways to keep going and get their work done.
It reminds us that even when things are tough, we can overcome them if we're resourceful and determined.
Yeah. And it's also a reminder that sharing our stories, good and bad, can be really powerful.
Right.
By talking openly and honestly, we can learn from each other, challenge our assumptions, and create a world where people are more understanding and empathetic.
I like that. As we wrap up this deep dive into what it's really like to film in Egypt, I'm curious, what was the most impactful part for you? What really stood out?
For me, it was how the filmmaker's experience showed that difference between the polished image we see of travel destinations,
Mhm.
and then the reality of what it's like to actually be there.
Yeah,
It's a reminder that travel isn't always glamorous,
right.
and there are often complicated issues going on beneath the surface.
And that's why we do these deep dives.
Exactly.
To explore those complexities,
Mm.
to challenge what we think we know,
hmm
and to start conversations about what's going on in the world.
It's all about encouraging curiosity, empathy, and a deeper understanding of how connected we all are.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
This has been a really fascinating journey, but unfortunately, we've reached the end of our deep dive.
It's been great exploring these topics with you.
And to our listeners, thanks for coming along with us.
Yeah, thanks for being curious and engaging with these important issues.
We encourage you to keep exploring the world with an open mind and a desire to learn.
Absolutely.
Until next time, safe travels, everyone. And remember, the most important thing you can pack is curiosity and respect for the places and people you meet.
This is the Deep Dive